So in the next couple of videos, I want to talk to you about something called supported typing. And I'm going to start off with this video talking about my experience with Kris. And essentially what supported typing is giving some type of physical support. It could be, resistance. It could be just like a touch on the arm. It could be, maybe support at the elbow. But there's a lot of kids who've become independent communicating using these techniques. And it is controversial in the research committee for those who have looked into the world and met people who are independent. I mean, there's no doubt that it's true, but nobody's been able to demonstrate from a clear, I guess, from like using some type of machine that would measure it. And there's also been shown to have influence when you're supporting somebody. So you need to really be careful with that. So my story with Kris, pretty much, let's see, I talked about his signing at Adams Camp, but he also typed with one of the speech therapists. And this was that was in August of 1993, and he was just a little over 5. And I just heard about this facilitated communication, knew nothing about it, and so I put it down on the Adams Camp questionnaire of things I wanted for Kris, just for someone to try it with him. Now, the reason why it made sense to me is that one of Kris's favorite shows to watch was Wheel of Fortune. I mean, he was nonverbal. If he tried to take any kind of an IQ test, he would have failed. But he'd sit there and love to watch Wheel of Fortune. And then the commercial would come on and he'd, go do his, autism thing, play with the toy in a certain way. And then the other thing is that he loved to watch those Disney sing-along videos. I'm not sure if they make them anymore, but at that point it was still the old VHS tapes. But he just loved to watch those, and Raffi. I don't know if you're familiar with the Raffi's children's songs. If you're not, it's a great, he does some really awesome songs. But they were big around the time when Kris was little. And so those things, he liked to watch he liked to watch the Wheel of Fortune. He would, love to watch the videos with the bouncing ball. And then the other thing is that I had gotten him something called a touch and tell, which was kind of high tech at the time. And essentially it's like a little iPad, or bigger than an iPad, but you have different overlays, and it's like, where's the barn, where's the house, where's the yellow ball. It goes through different, asking you to point. And Kris would sit with me, which was unusual, and just seemed to be very intent. And I just kind of was messing around. I didn't know anything about supported typing then. And so I kind of put my hand on his, and to be honest, I can't remember exactly how I did it, but just even touching him lightly, he would start moving towards like the red ball or the yellow ball or whatever the question was. And so it seemed like he knew what these things were. He knew his colors. And my mom spent a lot of time with us when we went through his brain surgeries. Saw me doing it with him, and when he was in the hospital for one of his evaluations for surgery, for brain surgery, my mom did it with him, and she looked at me like, oh my goodness, he knows his colors. And so putting that all together, when I heard about facilitated communication, which involved, I still didn't know really how to do it, but involved touch in some way, and the written word in some way. And so there was one speech therapist when we were at Adams Camp who had typed with someone who was pretty independent and believed that it was a valid tool. And unfortunately, the other speech therapist didn't believe in it and felt like it was this false hope kind of thing. But she came back one day, the one speech therapist who was working with Kris, who used facilitated communication supports, told me that he typed FOUVE for how old he was, DOUG for the therapy dog that was there, and one other thing, and I can't remember what it was. But so when she came back, she had given us a little letter board, and while we were at camp, we tried it. If it's something you want to know everything about your child at that point. But Kris wouldn't have anything to do with it. My take on it, because this happens a lot with parents, is that you get so in tuned when you have a nonverbal child, because it's with a young child anyways, it's kind of hard to tell if they're hurting or what they want, but it's, you have to anticipate even more for children, of course, who are nonverbal. And so my take is that they're in a rhythm with you, in a pattern, and to all of a sudden, bring out a letter board and be like, tell me your life story. I think it kind of freaks them out. But I've heard so much with parents that they'll push away the letter board or they don't want to use it at first. So after we finished Adams Camp, we went down to Boulder, Colorado to visit with my mother-in-law. And I was upstairs, and Will, Kris's dad, was downstairs with the kids, and they were watching videos. And all I heard was that, Kris started crying and screaming and was just really angry. So I came down and got him, and wasn't sure what was going on. Tried to go through all of the things that were, calming for him. A bath, some lullaby songs that he liked to sing, that he liked to listen to. But nothing was working. And so it was probably 10 minutes of him just screaming his fool head off that that I finally got the letterboard out and sat down with him. And as soon as I put him in front of me, and as soon as I got the letterboard, he was totally chill. And the therapist had told me at the time, and there's different techniques that have been developed, but essentially to give resistance to him. And so you're kind of just helping with that controlled movement. And what he did, and it was so clear before with the touch and tell, it was like just such a, minimal response that, it was such a minimal response that I wasn't 100% sure whether or not, it was me. Was I influencing him? But in this instance, he was pushing on my hand. He pushed RAFFI, and it was as clear as anything could be to me, because I was giving him that backwards resistance. And then, so he spelled out Raffy, and I asked if he wanted to watch Raffy. And so luckily, Will's mom had another VCR upstairs. And so I, took the video and went upstairs. And then when I talked to, and Kris was happy as a clam. And so then I went downstairs later, and what had happened was Chelsea, Kris's younger sister, didn't like a lot of the videos that Kris watched, and she preferred Old MacDonald, and so she was asking for it, and Raffy had been almost done, and Will took it out and put in Old MacDonald, and that's when Kris started getting upset. So that's my story with Kris, and that is why I never discounted the with all of the controversy around supported typing, and there's different kinds, but I believe it's all using, it's the same brain, that the autism brain is wired in a certain way, that using these supports help them get their communication out. Okay, so next we're gonna talk about the different techniques and what are the components to them.